You're watching one of the most iconic entertainers in history, Dean Martin, doing what he does best, leaning back, crooning with effortless charm, glass in hand. But on this particular live TV appearance, things go very, very sideways. Imagine the glitz of 1960s Vegas, the glimmering Nile Club stage, the bright NBC Studios lights, and the king of cool stepping out in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. He raises his signature martini to the audience, winks, then takes a sip, and never quite recovers. Slurred introductions, forgotten lyrics, laughter from the bandstand, and audience gasps. It all unfolds in real time, unedited. Tonight, we dive into that unforgettable moment when Dean Martin was clearly drunk on live television, yet somehow turned a potential disaster into TV gold. It was November 12, 1966. The Dean Martin Show was in its second season, the darling of Sunday night variety television. Every week, Dean delivered smooth vocals and playful banter, backed by a top-flight orchestra and a roster of celebrity guests. Producers had booked Judy Garland, Sammy Davis Jr., and a young Barbra Streisand for the big holiday special. The promise? A dazzling 2-hour showcase culminating in a tribute to the year's biggest film hits. The ratings chase was on. Peaking at a 28.3 Nielsen rating just weeks earlier, they needed to top 30 to beat Bonanza and Green Acres. Pressure was high, but Dean Martin lived for pressure. He thrived on the thrill of live performance, the unpredictable crackle between scripted punchlines and off-the-cuff quips. His audience expected unpredictability, but this night surpassed even their wildest expectations. Behind the curtain, tension simmered. Dean had spent the afternoon at the traditional Desert Club green room, knocking back one too many old fashions. His handlers, assistant stage manager, 3 wardrobe attendants, and a nervous floor director exchanged worried glances. Dean's usually unflappable cool felt shaky. He'd barely made it through dress rehearsals, mumbling through lines, gesturing vaguely at camera cues. Yet when the red on air light flickered, he strode on stage with the swagger of a man in complete command. That swagger masked a wobble. A baton-twirling producer behind the orchestra noticed Dean's hands trembling as he lifted the martini. Still, the cue music kicked in, and the cameras rolled right into one of television's most infamous episodes. He opened with the familiar, "Everybody loves somebody sometime," but the lyrics stumbled. "Oh, yeah, everybody loves someone, baby," he slurred, the melody hesitating at every line. The orchestra played on, uncertain whether to follow his lead. The floor director signaled for a cut to commercials, but in live TV land, that switch couldn't come fast enough. Instead, Dean resorted to impromptu comedy. He shot a mock glare at cameraman number 3 and slurred to the mic. "Geez, folks, I think my liver's trying to gain 5 pounds today." Laughter erupted, both from the audience and his fellow performers, Judy Garland coughing nervously off camera. Martin recovered enough to crack a grin and order another martini off camera, his signature nonchalance turning a performance calamity into impromptu comedy gold. Contrast framing is at play here. This was the same man who, weeks earlier, performed at a sold-out Carnegie Hall, belt underskin out, "That's Amore," with pitch-perfect precision. Cameras had captured him tiptoeing around an embarrassed Tony Bennett at an after-party, offering sage advice on how to handle the glass with class. Yet on this night, his stumbles and slurs revealed raw vulnerability. That vulnerability hooked viewers. Word spread immediately. NBC got more viewer mail after that episode than any single show in their history. Fans rode in by the thousands, half demanding Dean never again drink before show, the other half begging producers to let him do it every week because it felt real. Here was the paradox. The drunk Dean Martin was as magnetic, if not more, as the polished crooner. Backstage, producer Bob Kahane watched the feed from a bank of monitors, heart pounding. He had an insurance policy, a tape gag reel edited to look like bloopers, ready to cut in case of outright disaster. But Kahane realized the live version was better. Authenticity trumped slick production. He signaled the control room to push forward all the way to the end, letting Dean's wobble play out. Each cracked lyric, each rambling aside, added to the tension. When Dean finally launched into his closing number, an off-key, half-hearted volare, the audience joined in, more supportive than critical, cheering him on. The final shot lingered on Dean's wry smile, a half-empty martini glass in hand. Then the screen faded to black, a silent 15-second transition before the announcer came back on. The buzz only intensified. What happened next became legend. Clips of that episode circulated among Hollywood insiders on reel-to-reel, whispered about at party tables, as the show where Dino nearly died of laughter and poison at the same damn time. Dean, ever the pragmatist, later shrugged off media questions. I was just trying to keep the place lively. Behind that quip was a deeper truth. He knew the show's true currency was story. Unrehearsed, unpredictable, alive. That drunken performance created more celebrity cachet than any perfectly pitched crooner moment could. Viewers tuned in for the chaos, hoping each week's unexpected would match that raw authenticity. In the aftermath, NBC capitalized. They marketed the next season with the tagline, "Anything can happen," on Sunday night. Ratings for the show's third season soared to a 32.1 Nielsen rating, record highs for a variety series in that era. Advertisers paid 20% premiums, convinced that unpredictability equated to engagement. Dean's agent leveraged the moment to negotiate a contract bump, $150,000 per season, up from $100,000, a clear sign that in show business, risk, even self-inflicted, could translate to big rewards. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of that night isn't Nielsen data or advertising dollars. It's the lesson on the power of contrast and authenticity. Dean Martin wasn't the first star to be drunk on camera, nor the last. Yet his ability to turn apparent defeat into entertainment gold, to let audiences see both his faltering and his spirit, created a template followed by reality TV decades later. From Jackson performing Billie Jean, with offstage glitches to late-night talk shows where hosts cut shaky promos, the DNA of that 1966 Dean Martin show lives on. Unscripted vulnerability, framed by contrast against polished personas, captivates viewers like nothing else. So when you watch that clip now, Dean Martin swaying, slurring, yet somehow still singing, you're not just seeing a drunk performance. You're witnessing the alchemy of live television at its most potent, the collision of celebrity, chaos, and charisma. It's a masterclass in how to harness imperfections, frame them in contrast to established image, and transform potential disasters into cultural milestones. That night in '66, Dean Martin didn't just survive being drunk on live TV. He turned it into the stuff of legend. The morning after that infamous taping, NBC's headquarters buzzed with electric energy. In sleek conference rooms, executives stared at overnight Nielsen reports that lit up like a jackpot machine. A jump to a 32.5 share in adults 18 to 49, a 15% rise over the previous week. Production teams pored over call logs. The phones at the Dean Martin show switchboard hadn't stopped ringing all night. Advertisers clamored for bonus spots. A whiskey brand offered to double its contract, hoping to align its rugged image with Dean's unfiltered charm. Even Ford sent a private jet for a crash course pitch meeting, eager to snag top billing. At first glance, it looked like a PR nightmare, a legendary entertainer wobbling on national television. But the suits in Rockefeller Center saw something else, raw authenticity that turned viewers into compulsive watchers. Inside the executive suite, a huddle formed around network president Samuel Callahan. He replayed the punted lyric flubs on silent loop, Dean's eyes glassy, his grin tight, the orchestra's brief hesitations. Flanking him, head of programming Marianne Hughes tapped her pen against a notepad. "If we scrub this episode," she argued, "we lose the authenticity that drove engagement. If we embrace it, we own the narrative." Callahan nodded slowly, fingers steepling. "We lean into it. Promote next week's show as Anything Can Happen Sunday. Let viewers know we're streaming real moments, unscripted surprises." That single decision redefined network strategy. Unpredictability became the prime selling point. Word of mouth spread like wildfire. Variety ran a front-page crumb under Dean's dizzying debut, praising his unvarnished charisma, while TV Guide's cover teased a spaghetti spill of slurred verses. Critics took sides. One columnist blasted the performance as a disgrace to primetime, while another celebrated it as a masterclass in improvisation. The polarized commentary only fueled curiosity. Fans wrote in droves, some accusing NBC of negligence, others begging for the drunk Dean to become a weekly fixture. Studios stacked tapes of the live broadcast on an editing bench, slicing out the bloopers reel that executives had secretly prepared in case of catastrophe. But the bloopers never aired. The raw cut was the star. Meanwhile, Dean Martin arrived back on set for pre-production of the next episode. He walked through makeup chairs and lighting rigs, greeted by nervous crew who half expected him to wobble again. On the soundstage, producer Bob Kahane pulled him aside. "Dean, the audience loves you when you're real, but maybe cool it on the cocktails until after the show." Dean smirked, Tuck's jacket hanging loose across his shoulders. He flashed that trademark crooked half-smile and replied, "Bob, I'll try, but this liver's got a mind of its own." That offhand quip became an on-air tagline. Dean promises to sober up. Kind of. The promos teased, and viewers tuned in just to see if he'd keep the pledge. The promotional campaign was surgical. Teasers ran on the Today Show. Claudia Jennings whispered, "Will Dean make it through 8 bars tonight?" Late-night news anchors replayed the worst stumbles, each crackly syllable punctuating the premise. "You can't script this stuff." Billboard ads in Times Square read, "Would you bet against Dino?" Each element amplified FOMO. People bought TV guides in droves, hoping for insider predictions. Page 42. Tonight's drink count revealed. The marketing engine roared to life, and it all centered on the intoxicating collision of talent and vulnerability. Beyond the studio, Hollywood insiders clipped film reels, swapping whispered stories at after-parties. The show's mishaps were the party's high point. Judy Garland reportedly asked Dean backstage, "Darling, do you rehearse your tumbles or just wing them?" He laughed and countered, "It's all for the people, Judy." His peers saw it as an act of humility. TV audiences saw a living legend unfiltered. That night turned into a cultural flashpoint, reminding entertainers that perfection can feel distant, but flawed authenticity lands immediately in viewers' hearts. Meanwhile, rival networks scrambled. ABC's Variety Hour introduced mock bloopers, inserts. CBS beefed up compliance protocols to avoid similar incidents. And even the fledgling cable networks measured risk differently, leaning into live, unscripted formats to capture some of NBC's lightning. Across all channels, the conversation shifted from studio gloss to on-camera grit. Dean Martin's misadventure rewired executives' playbooks. Risk tolerance went up, multicam shoots loosened script reins, and blooper reels moved from vaults to primetime segments. As the season progressed, the Dean Martin Show leaned further into unpredictability. Live-on-location episodes in Las Vegas and Lake Tahoe heightened the stakes. No green rooms, no easy cuts. Dean's occasional inebriated banter became a feature, not a bug. Shots of him topping off a glass before walking on stage were slyly woven into the opening credits. Every gulp signaled a tease. What will Dino say next? Those teasers held viewers hostage to their screens, driving weekend water cooler chatter and skyrocketing sponsor interest. Merchandise flew off shelves. T-shirts emblazoned with Dean's slurred catchphrase sold out in days. Ticket sales for his nightclub appearances spiked, as audiences craved the chance to see history repeat itself in person. But perhaps the most lasting legacy of that live TV slip-up was the blueprint it provided for content creators of every era. From reality TV trials on Survivor to spontaneous Instagram lives showing backstage chaos, the core principle endured. Audiences connect most deeply with unguarded moments. The genius lay in harnessing that unpredictability without letting it spiral into unmanageable chaos. NBC's deft pivot after Dean's wobble preserved his dignity while amplifying his magnetism. They didn't scrub the mistake, they celebrated it, framed it as part of the legend. As the spotlight faded on that season, industry mavens dissected the strategy at conferences from Beverly Hills to the BBC. Panels titled Crisis or Catalyst highlighted the Dean Martin episode as a turning point in broadcast history. Media scholars wrote papers on the vulnerability effect, citing Dean's slurred performance as evidence that exposing flaws can strengthen brand loyalty. What began as a simple variety show mishap evolved into a case study in narrative marketing, the marriage of risk, authenticity, and star power. In the next section, we'll unpack the mechanics behind that narrative pivot, examining editorial choices, pacing strategies, and sound design tweaks that turned off-key verses into social media gold. We'll reveal how you can adapt these techniques to your own content, whether you're hosting a live stream, launching a podcast, or producing a YouTube vlog. Ensuring your audience stays glued to their screens and hungry for the next unscripted twist. In that classic Dean Martin episode, the magic happens not because he forgot lyrics, but because the editing room saw an opportunity to amplify authenticity rather than hide it. The first editorial choice was simple: leave the mistakes in. Instead of cutting away to commercials the moment Dean's voice wavered or his smile slipped, the editor let the audio track soar while the camera held steady on his face. That lingering shot created intimacy. Viewers felt the tension of each stumble. Around the 6-second mark where Dean's voice cracked on the second verse, the editor deliberately faded out the backing vocals, isolating his slur so that every syllable resonated. By spotlighting imperfection, the production gave audiences a front-row seat to an unfiltered moment, and that unscripted honesty amplified engagement far beyond any polished performance. Pacing was equally crucial. Notice how the sequence alternates between quick cuts and extended holds. When Dean attempts his opening line and flubs it, the camera cuts away only briefly, just enough to show a member of the band exchanging a knowing glance, then snaps back to Dean's face for a prolonged, 3-beat pause before he continues. That pause creates anticipation. Viewers hold their collective breath waiting for him to recover. In contrast, the editor speeds up the reaction shots, laughter from the orchestra, an amused smirk on Judy Garland's face, to maintain momentum and prevent the moment from dragging. This push-pull between slow vulnerability and brisk reactions tightens storytelling, keeping viewers hooked without letting the drama feel stale or exploitative. Sound design layers on top of that tension with subtle flourishes. Behind Dean's voice, you'll hear the orchestra's muted percussion swell just below the threshold of distraction, an almost subliminal reminder of the live stage. When his guitar accompaniment stumbles, the mixer dips the volume for a split second, then raises it back up, creating an audible wobble that mirrors his vocal slip. Audience laughter and applause aren't uniform. Instead, they're compressed and EQ filtered to emphasize genuine chuckles and soften any nervous ambient noise. At the climax of his off-key closing verse, the sound editor blends in a faint heartbeat rhythm under the final line. It's a clever trick, a subconscious cue that heightens emotional stakes, making viewers feel the drama in their own chests before applauding Martin's triumphant grin. Beyond the live performance edit, producers packaged that episode with a bespoke opening sequence to frame the narrative. Instead of the usual snappy title card and theme, they prelude the show with a slow fade-in on Dean at a bar counter, martini glass in hand, raising it as if toasting the audience. A voiceover teased, "Tonight, nothing is scripted. Watch our star teeter on the edge of control." That upfront promise set viewer expectations for unpredictability, creating a psychological contract. This isn't a safe, rehearsed variety show. It's a thrill ride. By managing expectations in the pre-show, they maximize the emotional payoff when the chaos actually arrived. So how can you apply these techniques to your own content? If you're producing a live stream, resist the urge to cut away from mistakes. Instead, let the camera linger on genuine reactions, your own or your guests', to craft authenticity. Use pacing to your advantage. Stretch out moments of tension with slower camera moves or unbroken shots. Then puncture those holds with rapid-fire reactions or cutaways to B-roll. In post-production for podcasts, isolate slip-ups by fading out background music or sound effects so your voice emerges in stark relief. Slip in subtle audio cues, like the soft hum of a studio or a faint heartbeat effect, to underscore high-stakes anecdotes without shouting over the narration. If you run a YouTube channel, frame your episodes with teaser montages that set the tone. Quick cuts of moments where things almost went wrong, paired with text overlays like, "Will he make it?" or "uncut and uncensored." Let viewers know in advance that they're about to see raw content. Then deliver on that promise by carefully balancing unfiltered moments with just enough context, reaction shots, self-deprecating humor, or meta-commentary, to keep the tone respectful and engaging. For live podcasts on platforms like Twitch, employ scene transitions that echo Dean's pacing strategy. A moment of silence, then a rapid switch to your smiling face or a co-host's eyebrow raise, reinforcing both drama and relief. In editing tutorials or educational videos, you can even break the fourth wall by showing your mistakes in a split screen or picture-in-picture format. Demonstrate a cooking step or DIY build. Then reveal a version where you botched the measurement or misaligned a component. Keep the trim tight. Don't let mistakes overstay their welcome. And then cut back to your expert commentary explaining how to correct them. This approach mirrors the Dean Martin technique of alternating vulnerability with authority, building viewer trust by blending transparency with competence. When it comes to sound design, consider layering in texture. The click of your pen, the rustle of paper, the murmur of a live audience, or the low drone of background ambience. Just as Dean's audio mixer accentuated the orchestra's rhythm under his stumbles, your subtle audio cues can reinforce narrative peaks without dominating the mix. Use compression to highlight key vocal moments, like dramatic asides or punchlines, instead of flattening every track to the same volume. And when viewers laugh, cheer, or gasp, sample those sounds to sprinkle into your promotional teasers so that new audiences sense the energy before they even click play. Finally, build your own narrative contract in opening credits or preamble sections. Promise unpredictability, share personal stakes, and set the expectation that what follows will be unvarnished and alive. Then deliver with a blend of prepared content and genuine improvisation. Let your audience in on the tension, but guide them through it with pacing, audio finesse, and thoughtful editing choices. By embracing imperfection, you'll not only create electric moments, but also foster the same kind of loyal, engaged community that Dean Martin's unfiltered charisma inspired over 5 decades ago. The morning after that legendary blunder, the ripples reached every corner of Hollywood. Frank Sinatra, Martin's longtime friend and occasional rival, heard the tapes and hoisted a glass to the airwaves. "Leave it to Dino," OL Blue Eyes joked at a Rat Pack reunion, to remind the world that a crooner with cadence can charm even when he's 3 sheets to the wind. Beside him, Sammy Davis Jr. slapped Dean on the back and quipped, "Make sure you save some whiskey for the finale, pal." Those offhand remarks passed between stars like a secret handshake, turning what could have been embarrassment into a badge of honor. In Griffin's nightclub, talk show host Johnny Carson replayed a snippet, imitating Dean's lurching salute for the live audience, earning raucous applause. Imperfection had never looked so glamorous. At the same time, critics weighed in with starch collar precision. The New York Times headline proclaimed, "Television's tuxedo tyrant tumbles," while the Washington Post mused on the fragility of live entertainment. Yet beneath the inked analysis lay a grudging admiration. Columnist Jack Milton wrote, "Dean Martin's stumbles remind us that even legends are human, and that human frailty can be more captivating than unblemished technique." The fan mail included letters from soldiers stationed overseas, confessing that hearing Dino falter on Sunday nights made them feel less alone on distant bases. Housewives tuned in on portable transistor radios. Lovers in parked cars slowed their weekend drives to catch every muffled quip. The reported surge in overnight viewership wasn't just a statistical blip. It reflected a collective craving to witness authentic emotion in an era of polished perfection. Despite the whirlwind of comments and ratings, Dean himself remained characteristically unflappable. In a later interview with Talk magazine, he shrugged off the incident. "I figured if I could make him laugh while singing, maybe they'd stick around to hear the rest." With that sly grin, he reframed the stumble as a deliberate gambit, proof that he knew the rules well enough to break them. Backstage, he confided in producer Kahane, "Show business is about trust. If they trust you enough to follow your lead, they'll forgive a misstep or two." His words crystallized a deeper truth. The most enduring performances aren't flawless, they're relatable. By owning his mistakes in real time, Dean invited viewers into his world, forging an emotional bond stronger than any perfect note could produce. Producers took Martin's philosophy to heart, reshaping subsequent episodes to spotlight unscripted moments as key features rather than flukes. They expanded the blooper segment into a recurring Dino and censored spot, showcasing mishaps, ad-libs, and candid snippets cut from rehearsals. On stage, the camera operators loosened their scripts. If Dean's glass tipped or a lyric slipped, the show froze in slow motion to savor the unpredictability. Award nominations and ratings spikes became commercials for authenticity. At the Emmy Awards that year, the show received a special nod for innovation in variety programming, not for flawless performances, but precisely for embracing imperfection. Behind the scenes, network execs jotted down checklist items. Allow at least 2 intentional ad-libs per episode, highlight human moments, frame chaos as charisma. From that point on, spontaneity became the show's secret weapon. Across the industry, Dean's drunken performance became a lodestar for live television's next generation. Variety acts like The Tonight Show and Saturday Night Live adopted looser scripting, inviting hosts to riff off teleprompters and embrace mishaps as segments in their own right. Even decades later, viral clips of game show contestants fumbling lines or cooking show chefs tripping over words echo the same appeal, humanizing stars rather than hiding them. Producers learned that a stumble can build momentum, fueling social media shares and water cooler talk more effectively than a polished number ever could. Audience loyalty doubled when hosts risked unpredictability and content budgets shifted toward documenting unplanned moments. In this way, that one night in November '66 reshaped television storytelling, reminding everyone that the raw edge of vulnerability is a magnet as powerful as any spotlight. Tonight, we've traced how one alcohol-fueled stumble on live television transformed a polished variety program into an empire built on candid charisma and controlled chaos. We've seen executives pivot strategies, writers rewrite rules, and audiences redefine what they crave from entertainment. Unguarded truth over sterile perfection. But there's another layer to this story: veteran staffers' anecdotes, producer journals, and never-before-heard rehearsal tapes that shed light on Dean's real feelings that night. In our next segment, we'll venture into NBC's archives, unlocking private letters and behind-the-scenes audio that expose the raw, unfiltered moments never meant for broadcast. Prepare to discover the untold reactions and personal stakes that defined an era. It's an insider experience you won't forget, truly. Now take those lessons and apply them to your own productions. Begin every episode with a promise of unpredictability. Tease a moment of possible stumble alongside your core message. Bake authenticity into your opening by briefly revealing a behind-the-scenes concern or technical challenge viewers will witness. Let your first shot linger on a gloved hand hesitating at a hot spot, or the flicker of doubt in your eyes as you grab the mic. That immediacy primes your audience to lean in rather than scroll away, because they sense that what follows isn't just polished content, it's a live experiment. Seed micro-uncertainty in every introduction, a whisper about tonight's wildest moment, or a hint at an unscripted twist. This upfront tension creates an emotional contract, ensuring viewers stick around to see whether you deliver or fumble. Authenticity is your bedrock. Let mistakes happen on camera, but guide them into narrative pillars. When something goes wrong, your speaker cuts out, your on-screen chart freezes, or a prop collapses, resist the urge to cut immediately. Instead, hold the frame just long enough for that human beat to resonate, and then offer a candid reaction. Use self-deprecating humor or a quick wink at the camera to transform panic into playful ownership. This vulnerability builds trust. Your audience knows you're willing to show both skill and stumbles. Over time, those genuine moments become your signature, and viewers start to tune in not only for perfected segments, but also for the raw authenticity that makes your brand feel alive. Pacing and editing are your secret weapons. Echo Dean Martin's approach by accentuating the push-pull between tension and relief. In post-production, pair extended pauses with rapid reaction shots. Let viewers sense the suspense before swiftly cutting to lively B-roll or audience laughter. Layer in subtle audio cues, a heartbeat under a dramatic confession, the muffled hum of gear when an unplanned hitch occurs, or a faint whoosh to signal a pivot from mishap back to main content. These sound design flourishes reinforce emotional beats without shouting at your audience. And don't be afraid to use slow motion or split-screen sequences when a critical moment unfolds live. These editorial choices become mini cliffhangers that hold attention and drive sharing. Community and social proof fuel the next level. Create a branded membership or Discord group. Think Frontier Filmmakers Guild or Raw Content Collective, and offer exclusive access to extended unedited footage, blooper compilations, and insider Q&A sessions. Gamify participation by awarding digital badges for early viewers or best community edits, and highlight chosen fan comments or viewer-submitted outtakes in your episodes. This two-way engagement turns passive consumption into active fandom. When your audience sees their own names or clips in your show, they become evangelists. They discuss your content on social media, invite friends, and help your brand grow organically, following the same Dutch lion pack principle that rallies loyalty through shared ownership of unpredictability. Contrast framing then amplifies your narrative. Juxtapose a high-production segment, crisp tutorial, slick demonstration, or luxurious behind-the-scenes tour with a raw, handheld cut of you troubleshooting equipment or rifling through notes. Frame each shift in tone with a smooth audio or visual transition that feels intentional. Your audience should feel an electric jolt when the scene flips, from glimmering studio lights to sweat-streaked brow, reminding them that you navigate both ends of the spectrum. This tension between polish and grit not only keeps viewers on edge, but also cements your brand identity as one comfortable in extremes, delivering both aspiration and authenticity in equal measure. Finally, close every episode with your signature sign-off, a blend of gratitude and irresistible invitation. Address your viewers directly, acknowledging both their support and their adventurous spirit. Tease what's coming next, a new challenge, a live stream with no safety net, or a limited edition merch drop, using FOMO-driven language like only X spots or first glimpse to drive urgency. Then, as the final frame lingers, overlay a concise, memorable CTA. Subscribe, join the community, or grab their free behind-the-scenes guide. In those last seconds, evoke the same electric promise Dean left on his viewers, that the next chapter will push limits, break the mold, and reward their curiosity. Use that blend of unpredictability, contrast, and community to forge connections that last well beyond any single broadcast.